tonight, so I was wondering how we would see, but it's a packed house again, so great to see you all. For those of you, and there are I think a few new faces in the audience tonight, for those of you that are new to Café Scientifique, we're going to have basically talk, I'll come on to Heather's talk in a moment. Heather's going to give us a bit of a talk, and then we'll break for a few minutes to grab some more drinks or any other bites to eat, before we'll all kind of reconvene to have some questions, have some discussions about the topic. So everything's all really informal this evening. Please do help these guys out who are obviously open for us on a Tuesday night by buying drinks and snacks, of course. A couple of warnings. We are filming our speaker this evening. That's to go on to YouTube for those people that are unable to make it tonight but want to hear the talk. We do have requests, by the way. We're also taking a few photographs of everything that's going on. If you don't want to be featured, obviously, on our website or any of the sort of publicity materials, please do let me know and we will make sure that you're not. In terms of kind of social media, please do feel free to tweet at CAFSci Bournemouth, that's B-Mouth, isn't it? Yeah. Or using the hashtag CAFSci Boscanova. We're also on Facebook. You can search for Café Scientifique Bournemouth. Please do like the page and we can give you sort of updates and you can feed back to us in terms of what you like. So, it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce Heather Dixit, who is going to be talking to us tonight about all sorts of exciting things that are going on around us in the green spaces of Bournemouth, of which there are many. So she's going to talk to us about the Bournemouth Naturally project and how that's involved with the NSS. So I'm just going to give us a lot of detail. So without further ado, let's introduce Heather and get going. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for such a nice introduction. As we've just said, tonight's talk is going to kind of be in two parts, really. I'm going to briefly talk about Bournemouth Natural Science Society first of all. Quite relevant to us in Boscombe tonight, as it's just down the road from here. So you'll hear a little bit about that in a moment. Secondly, I'm going to be talking about the Bournemouth Naturally project, which is more my area, as I'm going to be making sure the Bournemouth Naturally project goes forward in Bournemouth and try to get as many people interested as possible. So, first of all, a little bit about BNSS, a bit of history. It dates back to 1903 when the first minutes are thought to have come about by a group of people that were interested in natural history and got together to form a society where they could talk about their ideas, talk about research, and go out in the field and look at things. Currently, Bournemouth Natural Science Society is located at 39 Christchurch Road, so just down the road from here. I'm sure you've probably all seen this big building as you've gone past and maybe wondered what it is. So they've been there since 1920 when they converted it from a residential house into a natural history museum inside. And then at a later date they added quite a large lecture hall on the back so they could house where they could do talks and invite more people in to join. It's now a Grade 2 listed building, so it's definitely worth a visit for the building alone, let alone the collections. There's also quite a large garden at the back, which now is used for recreation, just a peaceful area, and also encouraging wildlife. It's quite a nice wildlife pond, and just a very peaceful place to go. So the society today, approximately 200 to 230 members. It's completely run by volunteers. So the only people there that are paid are myself and a caretaker. Everything else is done by volunteers. And the aim of the society hasn't really changed at all since it began. So really, it's a place to go for people who have an interest in natural history or science. It's just a place where you can go to meet people with similar interests, listen to interesting talks, have a look at the specimens in the museum. So the museum itself is divided up into departments, which works quite well as it used to be a residential house. It kind of divides itself up inside. You've got geology, Egyptology, archaeology, entomology, all branches of science that you could possibly imagine. There'll be someone with an interest, or there'll be something in the museum that will interest you. So just to give you a little example, we have a 2,500-year-old Egyptian mummy in the museum. This has been through various different scans. So they've scanned the inside and they've done a reconstruction of her face, and this is a slightly scary looking lady is what she used to look like. As well as the mummy itself, there's all kinds of Egyptian artifacts that did actually come from Egyptian tombs. They came from a private collection, someone that used to be a member of the society, and when he died he left his collections to BNSS. There's quite a large geology department downstairs, which features a very large collection of fossils, a lot of them local, from the Jurassic coast. Lots of crystals, things like dinosaur footprints, and lots of skeletons. So if you're interested in geology, it's definitely worth a look. There's all sorts of other things. Just to go into it briefly, a large collection of skulls from all areas of the animal kingdom. Quite a vast collection of taxidermy, which I know isn't everyone's thing, but it is interesting, and just to have such a wide variety in a small space is definitely worth a look. There's also a room dedicated to archaeology, and a lot of this is local, so these are Neolithic hand axes, all found locally from the Bournemouth area. One of the biggest selling points is a massive collection of insects that they've got in BNSS. So cabinets and cabinets and drawers and drawers and drawers full of them, both native species and the more exotic. So these are called morpho butterflies, and really something to see. I know it's not something you'd want to go around doing now, but I mean these are 100 years old, so to have such a big collection for people to look at variation between species can be quite useful even now. So it's not just the museum at BNSS. We also have open mornings once a month, so the doors are open to the general public. They can come in, look around all the rooms. All the volunteers are there on hand to tell you what you're looking at in the museum. There's one this Saturday morning between 10 and 1 if anyone's interested in coming along. There's also a programme of weekly field trips. This isn't just confined to Bournemouth, this is out into the surrounding area. And all it is really is a day out. You've got lots of people at the NSS who are experts in their field, so people interested in birds, people interested in plants. So if you ever wanted to go for a walk somewhere nice and actually learn something from an expert, it's a good thing to do. There's quite an extensive programme of lectures every Tuesday evening and every Saturday afternoon, and in winter sometimes Wednesday afternoons as well. These cover everything from astronomy to geology to any kind of natural history. So if you have any interest in science, there's bound to be something that you'd quite like to come to. They have some really good speakers, and you don't have to be a member to come to these. You can just come along, just turn up on the night and enjoy a nice talk. So this photo I quite like because it's an old one from 1933 on one of the field trips, so I promise things have changed slightly since then. So you can find out more about everything that's going on at BNSS through the website. We're also on Facebook, so all you have to do is type in BNSS into a search engine and it's usually the first thing that comes up. They've got an events page, so you can download the full programme of talks, field trips that are on that month, so definitely worth a look. And as I said, we are open this Saturday morning as well. So that was just a little introduction to BNSS. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the Bournemouth Naturally project, which is much more what I know about, I think. So just to explain a little bit about all these logos, the Bournemouth Naturally project is a partnership. As I've just mentioned, BNSS is one of the main organisations that were involved in getting it up and going, and that's where I'm based. The project is based at BNSS. We've got several supporting partners, so Amphibian and Reptile Conservation, Butterfly Conservation, Bournemouth Borough Council, the Wildlife Trusts, Dorset Environmental Record Centre and Bournemouth University are all supporting partners of the project. So basically all these people got together, talked about what they'd like to see happen in Bournemouth, and they came up with the Bournemouth Naturally project, and they bid for some lottery money and lucky enough to get awarded a grant in 2012 for a 2-year project and a project officer, which is me. So the aims of the project, basically we want to encourage local people to learn about and record wildlife in green spaces and gardens in Bournemouth. To do this, we're offering free events. We've got free talks, we've got guided walks, we've got species ID workshops for people that maybe are interested in wildlife but don't quite know what it is that they're looking at. All of this information that we're trying to gather in is going to go into a database, and this will be used to find out a little bit more about what wildlife we have in Bournemouth and the value of our green spaces. So we'll be able to use this information to look at specific green spaces where perhaps it's not that valuable to wildlife, and look at ways of increasing biodiversity. So it's all going to be useful information. So before the Bournemouth Naturally project came about, there was a wildlife survey in 2007 and 2008. And what this did was basically to identify all the green spaces in Bournemouth, map them, and do a kind of phase 1 survey of them, so a very brief overview of what's in that green space, what type of habitat it is, and how likely it is to be of value to wildlife. So that produced this map, which shows you, actually we're quite lucky that there's quite a lot of green space in Bournemouth. When you start looking at it, and even the tiny small little areas is actually quite, adds up to be quite a large percentage of the town. So this information that was gathered in 2008 is useful in that it creates the first step in learning a bit more about these green spaces. And what the Bournemouth Naturally project is going to do is build on this to gather in the information about what wildlife live in these habitats through the general public. So, as I was just saying, and as you could see from the map, there is quite a high proportion of green space in Bournemouth, which isn't that common in towns and cities these days. But what's more special, I think, is the quality of those habitats. So within Bournemouth there is 3 sites of special scientific interest through heathland areas. So you've got Terbury Common, a little bit of heathland on Kinston Common, and Hengistbury Head are all internationally protected for their heathland. There's also several sites of nature conservation interest which have been identified as maybe not being special habitats but being important to wildlife, so they deserve a designation. And then you've got 10 local nature reserves which have basically been created to raise awareness to people that these are actually places for wildlife and places to be enjoyed. So between all of those, we're covering heathland, woodlands, river, cliff top, and lots of parkland. So it's a real diversity of habitats. And here is just a few. I'm sure most of you will be familiar with your local green space. So we've got the cliff top at Southbourne, Millam's Mead, Kinson Common, and this is Turbury Common at the bottom there. Again, Kinson, Kings Park. This is one of my favourite photos because it looks like you're just in the middle of a field in the countryside. And Turbury again at the bottom there. So part of the project really is to raise awareness of these green spaces, because a lot of people do say, oh, I didn't realise that was there, or I didn't realise there was anything special there. So what we need really is everyone to help to record wildlife. So we're doing this in several ways. We're gathering in wildlife sightings from everyone. This can be everyday species or looking at particular species that we need records of. One way we've done this is to create an email list, and each month there's a species that we want people to look out for. So if you're interested, I can add you to the email list, and each month you'll find out which species it is that we're looking for and why. This, unfortunately, because the project is in partnership with Bournemouth Council, we are looking specifically at Bournemouth green spaces. But this doesn't mean to say if you live in Poole or Christchurch that this information isn't going to be important. It's really about getting people thinking about recording wildlife and what they've seen. So we'd be quite happy to collect in any of that information. It will of course be passed on to the Record Centre. I'll say a bit more about how you can contact me or do recording a bit later on. So, species of the month. We've tried to kind of put a bit of a seasonal spin on species of the month. So it's going to be based on a species that you're likely to see that month for whatever reason. So at Christmas we had mistletoe. This is an ivy bee, which only comes out in sort of late September. And some of the overwintering birds that are quite easy to spot in winter. A lot of people have said that asking for records of wildlife can be a little bit overwhelming because you might not know what we're looking for, like what wildlife should you be recording. So what we've done is to create a list of 5 that we specifically would like records of. This has been based on species that are quite charismatic, things that you're not unlikely to see, but they might not be that common, but are instantly recognisable. So included in this is hedgehog, common toad, the stag beetle, red admiral and house sparrow. So all of these are species which recently there's been cause for concern about a decrease in numbers or distribution. So any information that we can gather in about those populations locally will be extremely useful. So I do have handouts of these if anyone wants to take one away with them so that they remember which species it is we're looking for. So, there's 2 ways really that we're looking to gather in this information, directly through me, or we have created a system where you can do it online. This can be accessed through the Bournemouth Naturally webpage, which is linked to the BNSS website I showed you earlier. It's basically a map-based system. I would say you have to be quite comfortable with using computers to get to grips with this one. It is fairly straightforward, but it does require a bit of a practice the first time you do it, and just so you can go through the motions of getting records on there. But it does have advantages. If you're interested in recording wildlife, it's not just confined to Bournemouth. You can use this system for wherever you want to look at wildlife. It gives you distribution maps, summaries, it tells you a bit of information about what you can see in certain sites. So it's definitely worth having a go at if you're interested in doing this thing long term. So it's not just about the physically gathering in wildlife records. We're also offering a range of activities that people can get involved in. This is the pond at the NSS. We are giving us a series of Species ID workshops. So if you're interested in a particular group, say you're interested in butterflies and you'd really like to record the butterflies that you see in your garden, but you might not necessarily know what species you're looking at. We have designed a range of different workshops that you can come along to, so whatever you're interested in. And it's basically so that you can have a talk from a local expert about identifying species and tips for how you can go about doing it, keeping it very simple, so just concentrating on local species that you're likely to see in Bournemouth. And then what we do is we take you out onto one of the green space sites after the talk, go for a bit of a walk round, look at the species that you see on the day with your expert on hand to help you identify what you've seen. So far we've been able to offer butterflies, dragonflies, reptiles, amphibians, bats and small mammals, and last week we had a beginner's botany workshop. So we're trying to cover a whole range of things that people are likely to be interested in. We have quite a few more of these to come in 2013. As I said, it's a 2-year project and we're already 1 year in, so this last year is going to be really important in trying to get all these things going. So we're trying to cram as much in as possible. So this is just a few photos of some of our workshops. This is the butterfly day. It always helps when you have experts on hand that can catch some of these things. You can get a real close-up look at them, because things aren't always easy to identify when they're fluttering around. So it's generally been quite successful and people have gone away feeling like they've actually learned something. And this is actually Iford Meadow that we took people for the butterfly and dragonfly days. This, unfortunately, probably shouldn't have put these two photos together. I assure you the adder is not trying to eat the mouse. It was just unfortunate. We did a Reptile Id day and we went to Terbury Common, where they already do quite a lot of studies on reptiles. So it was a good place to go because we, almost guaranteed that you would see something, and they already have the refugia out, so you can kind of lift them up and see if there was anything underneath. And we were very lucky in that this adder was under the first one that we looked under, so I think people probably quite enjoyed seeing an adder up close. And this is our small mammal trapping day that we did. So we got a whole load of small mammal live catch traps, got people along, told them a little bit about small mammals and why it's important to survey them. Let them have a go at setting and baiting a trap, putting it out in a spot, and then we came back the next morning and everyone got to check their own trap to see what they'd caught. And luckily we had, this is a wood mouse, and we had a couple of bank voles and a shrew. So it was quite nice to show people a variety of species in a short space of time. This is a fairly recent one. This is our Amphibian day. We had a bit of a talk from Amphibian and Reptile Conservation, and then we went out into the garden, which didn't have to go too far for that one. to look at the amphibians in the pond. So it was very early, I mean it was March, so it was still quite cold, but we luckily managed to catch this, he's upside down, but it's a nail smooth view there. As well as the workshops, we're also offering guided walks. As I was saying earlier, the idea of this is to encourage people to become more familiar with their local green space. So places where you might drive past or walk past every day and have never really taken that much interest in. What we try to do is offer a walk round with a group, a little bit of information about what you can see there and why it's important. So it's been quite successful. These have generally been over the winter, so there's nothing too exciting happening, but we've been quite lucky in that every time we've gone out we've seen something of interest that people have really enjoyed to see. So a few examples of that. We saw this kestrel at Boscombe Cliffs, and actually it was on a lamppost and we were all stood underneath the lamppost looking up at it, and it just wasn't really that fussed. So it's things like that that make it special and people really enjoy it. This at the end is, we did a tree walk with the Bournemouth tree wardens, and we were lucky enough to be able to go into the grounds of JP Morgan to go around and look at the tree species that were growing there. And this oak tree is possibly one of the oldest in Bournemouth. They think it might be 400 years old, so it's picking places suited to what you want to look at. So looking at trees, this was the ideal place to go, and as it's not somewhere that you normally get to wander around, we had quite a big crowd. I think everyone's quite nosy, really. The other thing we're doing, as well as the workshops and the walks, is actually offering people the opportunity to get hands-on experience of survey. So instead of just going to a talk or going to a walk, you can actually get in there and have a go with a net and a pair of binoculars. And so once a month we've got this survey group. We're going around different sites in Bournemouth, and these have been decided upon based on conversations I've had with Bournemouth Council and the Record Centre, people who have identified gaps in their data and have said, actually we know absolutely nothing about what wildlife lives in this green space, so it would be good to fill in a gap. So we've picked sites where no information is really known, so it can only be a good thing to go there and see what's there. So this basically involves sort of running around with a net, trying to catch things, shaking trees, and then just getting ID guides out and having a go at working out what you can see. And luckily, we've had people along on these that actually really know what they're talking about, so there's me flicking through my ID book and they say, oh, that's such and such. So it's good, really. It helps you learn, and it's good fun as well. So, 2013, we're planning many more ID workshops, more guided walks, as I was just saying, opportunities to take part in surveys, as well as collecting in wildlife records wherever possible. We're also running a photographic competition, which I'm just going to say a little bit more about. The idea of this really is just to back up the idea of searching around your garden or local green space to see what's there. Anyone that's interested in photography, or anyone that just has a camera and likes to take pictures like me, this is open to everyone. You don't have to be a photographer at all. We just would like pictures of local wildlife. And you've got quite a long time to think about it because the closing date isn't until the 6th of November. There's 3 categories, so really we're looking at flowers, animals and green spaces, so hopefully that covers most things. The only thing we're asked really is that your photo needs to have been taken within Warmuth itself, so the sort of borough of Bournemouth. I've got some flyers down the front here, so anyone that's interested, please do pick one up. So just an example of what's coming up. For anyone that's really keen, tomorrow morning we have a birdsong workshop. Unfortunately, you do have to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, so it's maybe slightly on the early side. We've got a Beetle ID workshop coming up in June, and this year we're doing butterfly and dragonfly workshops together, so it will be starting off at the NSS with 2 talks from 2 local experts, and then we're going out for a walk in the afternoon. And again, we're doing the reptile workshop again in September, and anyone that's interested in plant galls, you can come along and learn all about them. I have to say it's not something I know an awful lot about myself. So you can find all of that information and my contact details on the website, which again, if you go to the BNSS website, there's a side panel with a link to Bournemouth Naturally. So that is your main source of information if you'd like to find out more. So you've got the website, my email address, which is on all of these leaflets down the front if anyone wants to take one away. If you do have email access and you are interested in learning about what we're doing each month, the species of the month, what events we've got on, and also receiving our newsletter that we have, then if you contact me, I can just add you to the email list, and you can find out that way. So that's basically it. Thank you very much for listening to me talk today.
Thank you ever so much. Absolutely fascinating, and I'm really intrigued to discover all the things that you're actually finding out and some of the motivations of why people are going out and what they get out of it. But perhaps before we do that, it's time to recharge our glasses. So I'd like to grab a sort of 10-15 minute break, and then we'll reconvene for some discussion. Cheers, thank you.